Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right on KPFT, your community radio station. We have a great program for you today. Title of the show today is Patrick Carolan on bold environmentalism. Nicole Wallace talks GOP, and Cindy Kaujo-Mellon on stimulus. So anyhow, Patrick Carolan visits to discuss the latest, very timely article titled, the one he wrote, Bold Visionary Thinking is a necessary to combat climate crisis. Now, it's been clear for some time that Donald Trump gave the Republican Party permission to be who they are. Nicole Wallace got it. More importantly, her most important statement is not that the Republican Party is scared of Donald Trump. She made it clear in this little piece that you're going to hear. The Republican Party is Donald Trump. Also, just in time for the passage of the COVID-19 relief bill, it's been passed over the last several weeks, Cindy Kaujo-Mellon discusses financial planning in the COVID era that makes sense. So if you haven't spent all your monies yet, or if you have a little bit to talk about, she has a little bit of advice that she may want to give to you. But anyhow, before we get started, please remember to keep your community radio station, KPFT, in your minds. Talk about it. Tell your friends to tune in to 90.1 FM Houston, or listen at kpft.org. Likewise, keep our 100,000 watt station that covers the entire Southeast Texas on air by donating what you can afford at our website, kpft.org. Lastly, remember, you can get Politics Done Right Mondays through Fridays on Facebook Live at facebook.com/Politics Done Right. Again, that is facebook.com/Politics Done Right, or on YouTube Live at politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. That is politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. Please do not forget to follow me on Twitter for updates. My handle is at Egberto Willies. That is Egberto Willies, spelled EGBERTOWILLIES. Again, that is Twitter at Egberto Willies. That is Egberto Willies, spelled EGBERTOWILLIES. A very short soliloquy. In this country, we like to fool ourselves. We are the bastion of morality. Now, when we elected Barack Obama, we thought it was going to be a post-racial America. When we convicted Chauvin, we thought that police brutality against the bodies of people of color would be over. But if you cannot accept your origins, if you cannot accept your genesis, we repeat the same thing over and over again. The insanity of who we are right now is based on who we were, who we started as. But anyhow, folks, let's go ahead and get busy. We have a great show for you today. Stick around. We are honored once again to have a discussion with Patrick Carolan, who is the Catholic social justice advocate, originally from Connecticut and currently working with Vote Common Good as director on Catholic outreach. His opinions do not necessarily reflect those of the Franciscan Action Network, but his opinions are definitely needed by us all. Welcome aboard, Patrick. How are you doing today?
Thank you. It's good to be here. I'm doing great. My wife and I both got our vaccines, so we're feeling free.
You still wearing your mask when you go out, or?
I wear my mask everywhere we go. We're still keeping socially distant. doing all that. And actually, 3 of my 4 children have now been vaccinated, and my 4th child has her appointment scheduled for about 2 weeks.
Excellent, excellent. I got mine too as well. I got the Moderna. Which one did you get?
I got Pfizer.
You got Pfizer. Excellent. Anyway, look, one of the reasons we wanted to talk is you wrote a pretty long piece, a very detailed piece, and it is called Bold Visionary Thinking is Necessary for Climate. Wait, let me repeat that. Bold visionary thinking is necessary to combat climate crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And before we even get into the meat of that, I'm going to tell you one particular phrase that stuck out to me, Patrick, and I want to start there, and then we can move on into the details of the piece. But this is what was said in there. Natural creatures have an intrinsic value independent of their usefulness. Each organism, as a creature or as a creature of God, is good and admirable in itself. The same is true of the harmonious ensemble of organisms existing in a defined space and functioning as a system. I think that phrase alone, if humanity could follow that,
yes,
it would solve just about every problem we have today. So let's go ahead and first expand on that.
Yeah, and so I mean, first of all, that's part of Franciscan thinking. It's Franciscan spirituality that comes from the teachings of Saint Francis and others like Bonaventure. But it's the intersectionality of everything. And 50 years ago, there was a man, Lynn White, who wrote an article, and he said that our ecological problems is fundamentally a theological problem. It's not a science problem. It's a theological problem. And his thesis was, and he focused it on the idea that and particularly Christianity, he was talking about Christianity, that our Christian belief, our Christian theology teaches us that we have dominion over creation, and that creation is here to serve us. We're not all part of, we're not in relationship with creation. And he said, until that changes, we're never going to solve the ecological problem. Now we moved away from that a little bit, but he didn't really go far enough. He's talked about that. But what he should have said was the whole idea of our theology as a whole, as Christians, and the theology of we're here to go there. Our only purpose here is to go there, wherever the there is. And so as long as we believe that we're here so we can get to there, everything we do is about us getting to there. Jesus taught us that what we're here for is to create the kingdom of heaven here. And so if we change our theology, and we have an opportunity to do that, it is changing, it's evolving, so that we're building the kingdom of heaven. That kingdom of heaven will look at the common good, the common home, and look at all of creation from that perspective of the intrinsic value. A tree, and I wrote this in the article, a tree today only has value, its only inherent value is when it's standing in the forest, and it has value when it can be cut down and sold. So the question is the wood more valuable than the cost of cutting it down? It has no value in terms of serving as a home for birds and squirrels and other animals, as a home for what it does to provide oxygen, what it does to connect all of us through its root systems. It has no value from that, just from an economic standpoint. So we need to rethink our whole system, starting with our theology, to be focused on the common good.
Now, that is profound, Patrick. And I think we can expand on that a bit more, right? Because if you look at as capitalism as defined, where it's all about the maximization of profit solely for the benefit of the person who owns that company, the shareholder, then that is how you look at things. But you don't only you use the tree as an example, right? And we're here to talk about the environment and climate change, etc. But I believe it actually starts with human beings. If let's expand on that statement that I started with. It stated that one should not look at the intrinsic value independent of usefulness. And what we've done with our economic system is the complete opposite of that. If we look at a person that doesn't have work to do, or a person that isn't producing something of value, we don't look at, well, that person may be doing something that we don't in our society value, but
Mhm.
it's still something being done. Why don't you, let's move it from the tree and move
Yeah.
it to how humans are treated right now, and then we'll get back to the climate.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true. I mean, just look at arts, people in the art world, and you know, people used to be valued for their artwork. Now, their artwork is only good if it's can be sold for a price. And music, people, and you know that you're in the entertainment business. People focus write their music so that it can be commercialized and sold. So we've lost that intrinsic value. We've lost that connectiveness to each other. We're living in a world where it's all about me as an individual. And again, I always go back to the theology, the Christian theology of we're here to go there. And so, um, you know, helping the poor is a good example. It's good that we spend time helping the poor only insofar as it helps us get to heaven. If we're helping the poor to help the poor and that's not helping us to get to heaven, then it's not valuable. And so we need to move away from the theology of we're here for salvation, redemption. We're here for salvation and redemption. We're not here for salvation, redemption. We're here for creation. And we all have an intrinsic value. God is part of us. We're part of God. And so because of that, we have to see God in each other, and then we have to see the intrinsic value in each other, whether we're, artists, whether we're writers, or whether the person who, cleans up the toilet bowls. We all have an intrinsic value, and we're all part of the one. And until we get to see that, then we're never gonna overcome economic inequality. We're never going to overcome human trafficking. We're not going to overcome any of those. St. Clare was a Franciscan, one of the founders of the Franciscan order with St. Francis, and she said that you should see Christ in everybody, and everybody should see Christ in you. And if you're not doing that, go home and start over. And so we have to have that connection to each other. We're all part of the one. We're all individuals as part of the one, but we are part of the whole. And it should be, as Pope Francis talks about, this is our common home. And, I often share and talk about every single day, 18,000 children die of starvation or hunger. We could cut our defense budget by 20% in this country, wouldn't hurt our defense at all, and feed every single child in the world forever. So no child would have to go hungry if we just cut 20% off our defense budget. We have to start thinking that way of the common good, not this is going to help me individually or this is going to help my little subset, my group, because we're all part of one group.
And it is interesting because there are two things that you specified, and I think these are specified within the Christian religion, right? That one, we are the dominators of nature. Nature is supposed to be dominated by us, and number two, that we have to start looking at the other at human beings for who they are, and not as a transition, not doing good towards that human being as a transition to that better,
Yes.
whatever it is that we want. And when you look, it takes a different frame, and we have the evangelical Christians right now that in effect they go through checkpoints of what they believe is going to get them to heaven, and they are ruthless in the way they try to enforce it. Of course, most of their leaders are unable to do so in any other than a hypocritical way, but that is their tenet altogether. I think what you're pointing out here, and I think what the article points out, and like I said, it's an environmental article, but that statement that I read was what jumped out at me.
Yeah.
In reading that statement, it was like, wow, this doesn't only apply to the environment, the intrinsic value of a tree, the intrinsic value of that lion, the intrinsic value of that elephant. What is it actually doing to make somebody some money? What is it actually doing to keep society to keep the entire ecosystem as a whole? So we have to look differently. Now, in your piece that you wrote, you pointed out that for some time now, the popes, you're Catholic, of the Franciscan nature, for some time now, the Pope, we have a Franciscan as a Pope now.
He's actually a Jesuit. He's not a Franciscan.
Jesuit. Jesuit.
That's
What's
okay.
the difference? What's the
Hmm?
difference? Help me. What's the difference?
Oh, you want to know the difference between the Jesuits and the Franciscans?
Yes.
We still pretend to be humble. The Jesuits have given up all pretense of being humble.
Okay, now, but they all doing good stuff, right?
Oh yeah, no, they're just different orders within the Catholic Church. The Franciscans were founded by Saint Francis. The Jesuits were founded by Ignatius. But there's a
Got it.
little bit of a, I often tell people ask me about Pope Francis and how do we feel as Franciscans about Pope Francis being a Jesuit and taking the name of Francis. And I say, well, all of us in our youth and through our youthful exuberance have made mistakes and errors. And we're so grateful that our Holy Father, as he got older and wiser, saw the errors of his ways. So.
Oh, you humble guy.
I said we pretend to be humble.
You pretend to be humble. But anyway, what you've stated in your article is that these popes, Pope Francis, Pope Benedict,
John
and the
Paul
one
II.
before Pope, I don't remember his name. Before
John Paul
Benedict,
II.
John Paul II went ahead, and they were always in writing edicts towards the environment. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? And what is it going to take for all these leaders around the world who tend to want to follow the Christian form, not really applying that to the capitalism that is right now destroying the planet?
Yeah, and just let me comment on that. I mean, I look at things through the vision of a Christian because I'm Christian, but I often quote the Quran too. So if you read the Quran, you'll see a lot of the similar statements in the Quran and in the Torah and in pretty much every other faith tradition. So it's just, for me, it's easy because I was raised Christian and Catholic, and that's what I quote. But it could be any faith tradition. And I mean, I think the popes understood the connection. First of all, the idea that we are not here to be dominant over nature. Even the term.
Wait, let me halt you right there 1 second. You said we're not here to be dominant over nature, but that is what's preached by. If you go to any Pentecostal church, if you ever go to a one of these evangelical churches, that's what they're teaching. And I believe there's a part of the Bible that insinuates that. Isn't that true?
There's parts of the Bible that insinuate lots of things.
Right.
I mean, the part of the Bible that talks about slavery being
well, that's true. Very true. Very true.
You have to read the Bible from that perspective. And yes, there's Catholics there's bishops and priests who still preach that. But that's not the teaching. That's not the teaching that we get from St. Francis. It's certainly not the teachings that we got from Jesus. And so those are more teachings that came from Aristotle. Most of our theology today comes from Aristotle, not from Jesus. So we have to think about that perspective. And that's why I keep saying we need to rethink our theology. Our theology has to evolve. So the popes, I think, have come to, particularly Francis, but Benedict and John Paul too, to an extent, come to the realization that we're not here to be dominant over creation, that creation is part of the one. We're all part of creation. We have value, but the tree has value in creation. And that, we got to stop being transactional and become relational. And this is what the real beauty of what St. Francis taught us. Everything we do for the most part now, whether it's, economic, spiritual, it's all transactional. We need to start to become relational. We have to be in relationship with creation, not transactional about creation. We have to be in relationship with each other, not transactional with each other. I can't help you because it's going to be good for me. That's defeating the purpose completely. And so we have to move in that direction. And let me also say, I wrote a piece a couple months ago about this, about COVID. And, COVID is starting to come, we're starting to see the light. I hate to use the term light at the end of the tunnel because Trump used that term all the time, but we're starting to see COVID go away a little bit. We're starting to see some hope. And you hear people saying all the time, I can't wait for things to get back to normal. And I wrote a piece that said, we don't want to get back to normal because normal wasn't good. We have an opportunity to create a new normal. We have an opportunity to do better. And that's focusing on the common good. We should, everything we do, our laws, our government actions, our government programs, anything that we do should be focused on the common good. And then we'll start to build that society that we all hope and dream about. We're not going to do that by passing this law or that law. It's how when we change our basic theology and our basic ways we interact with each other.
Did you send me that article? Because that is an article that I would definitely want to.
I'll send it to you.
Please send that article to me, because I think that, I mean, there are others that have written similar articles. We don't want to return to what we thought was normal, because what was normal was not all that good.
Right.
What was
Yeah,
normal?
I'll send it to you.
Now,
and I have no idea if I sent it to you or not, but
please do. I want to get that one posted as well.
Yeah.
Now, Patrick, you brought up the Green New Deal
Yeah.
in the piece as well. Now, I have some mixed feelings about how the Green New Deal is marketed, and I think you've just even gave me reason to state that we could use the Green New Deal to reframe thinking as well. Right now, in order to placate many, the Green New Deal is mostly being sold as a job creator. It's being sold as it's going to be good for employment. It's going to be good, as opposed to what it's really going to be good for: sustainability, homogeneous environment, and equity. All these, the things that really should sell it. The great jobs is just a byproduct of good things happening.
Yes.
So expand on that for me.
Yeah, I mean, the Green New Deal, in my opinion, is really about how we relate to each other. It goes much deeper than just it's a job creation. It certainly will create jobs. And, it's fascinating. There's a whole part of the Green New Deal that talks about a just transition. And so when you think about that, you think about, it's easy. And I have this discussion with my friends that work in the green organizations, and they often talk about all the green jobs we're creating. And I say, that's great. You know where we're not creating green jobs? In Western Pennsylvania or in West Virginia or in the other areas where the jobs in fossil fuel are. So if we really want to talk about, we have to think about it from that perspective of how do we create jobs in these communities where job loss is happening? How do we, think about it holistically? And that's what the Green New Deal does, is think about holistically, how do we move forward, not look at each of these individual things. The other side of it is, as you saw, and I think I mentioned this in the article, in the last election, people were talking about the Green New Deal as if it was from Satan. It's so just the term Green New Deal has taken on, a whole meaning in itself, depending on which side of the aisle you're from. And we have to move away from that. We have to move away from labeling it as this, just what you said. This is not what it is. It is an idea, a concept of how we can start to relate to each other, how we can build community together. It gives us a blueprint for doing that. This is not a piece of legislation that's going to mandate it. It's a blueprint for how. And we need to start doing more of that. We need to start looking at, we talk about how, well, we have to do better. We have to deal with income inequality. We have to deal with racism. But we don't talk about how we're going to deal with that, how we're going to approach that. We just talk about that we have to do it. We have to move beyond that part of it into the action side and say, here's some steps we can take to do it. Not going to be easy. People are going to be angry. Because people are going to lose some part of their lifestyle, and they're going to get angry when that happens. But we have to understand that and be ready for that, and provide some healing. As people of faith, we have to be there to help people grieve over the loss of their lifestyle. But it's part of what the common good is about. We're all in this together.
One of the reasons I love talking to you is that you force what we all know as critical thinking. Mm-hmm. Because the problem we have today is people don't think from the brain. They don't think critically. They have a tendency to think from the hip. I know you can't really do that, but you understand what I mean. In other words, I throw out a phrase that hits you. I know how to throw those phrases out that hits you a particular way, and you don't get a chance to really start thinking about what the person is saying. What I've learned to do over the years is to let somebody give their entire thought so that I can make a complete analysis of it. And what I love about your piece, which is a fairly long piece,
Mhm.
is that that is exactly what you did, not only from your own critical thinking, but also from the thinking of many others that have come before you or that are there
Mhm.
with you. I think that is what's important. So
Yeah,
I
a couple of years ago, and this is shortly after the Green New Deal proposal came out, I was invited to give a talk in Western Pennsylvania, and it was at a Catholic church. And the person who invited me mentioned to me, they wanted me to give a talk about Laudato Si and climate, and he said you probably shouldn't mention the Green New Deal because this is Western Pennsylvania, it's cold country to an extent. So I went and I talked all about the Green New Deal. I didn't mention the Green New Deal. I didn't mention climate change. And at the end of my talk, people were very much supportive of everything I said. If I had gone in there and said the word Green New Deal or climate change, they would have blocked off completely. They would have
ex-
never listened to another word I had to say. So we really have to think about how we present things. And we're not trying to be deceiving people. We're just trying to get them to listen a little more and really think, as you said, critically.
that is a magic right there, because I've run through that same thing with in my conservative area, having conversation with people on Medicare for all. And I sat down with this woman and we talked about Medicare for all, but I didn't never use the word. I just thought, wouldn't it be nice if, because she was having problems with her insurance company, but she was a conservative to the core who believed in the entire capitalist form of health insurance. And I said, we were talking nicely, and I told her things like, "Don't you think it would be nice if we did this? And wouldn't it be nice if we?"
Yes.
And then sometimes I asked her, "What would you have done?" And sometimes the answer she gave is the answer that Medicare for all gives.
Yes.
And I started to feel a bit guilty because it was like, oh my God, this woman doesn't know that she's talking to a left wing kind of dude, you know? And I said, ma'am, I just want you to know that I am very liberal. I'm a progressive guy. To put it
Yeah.
bluntly, I'm a democratic socialist. Her eyes opened wide. She turned very red and she said, but you're so nice.
You don't
And,
have horns.
and then what I said is, we all are. They are too.
Yeah.
We have allowed externalities to come in and really blow us apart for
Yeah.
the betterment of just a few. And that I always go back to that statement that you put. We got to start looking at the intrinsic value of each of us, you know,
Yes.
and also try to look for the goodness in each of us. But anyhow, we're coming close to the close of
Mhm.
this thing. So you know what, you've been interviewed by me before, so I hope you're ready
Yeah,
for this.
I
Okay.
am.
What didn't I ask you? However many things I didn't ask you that you really want to say, Egberto, this is what we need to have in this particular interview. The people need to know this.
So I thought about this because I knew you were going to ask this question. And let me just say, I really appreciate being on your show and talking with you. I think we had some great conversations. I think, we sort of touched on it a little bit, but the whole idea of that we have to rethink our theology and rethink that so that, the idea that the intersectionality of all of creation and how we are part of our common home, that's what we should be moving forward on, is thinking from that perspective that, and again, it's our common home is here, not there. To move away. I'm giving a talk in a couple of weeks with Brian McLaren, who I don't know if you've had Brian on, but if not, you should have him on your show. Wonderful man. And we've talked about this a little bit, is how much our theology has played into the problems that we're having today and how we haven't evolved into a theology that makes sense for today's society. And that's where we need to be. We need to have those kind of conversations. I don't pretend to know the answers. I just know the questions. But I always remind people that if you read all the Gospels, Jesus never answered any questions. He just answered questions with more questions. And so I'm not comparing myself to Jesus, but I'm going to be like Jesus and just keep asking questions. And the other side of it is we have to make people feel uncomfortable, because if you're not uncomfortable, you're not changing. And it's only when we get out of our comfort zone and embrace the uncomfortableness that we change and transform.
Well, Mr. Patrick Carolyn, a Franciscan who says you guys you play like you're humble. I think you're really, really humble, because when you say you ask the questions, the fact of the matter is, you have a lot of the answers as well. So, look, it's been my pleasure to have Patrick Carlon, who is the director of Vote Common Good, right?
Yeah, that's for
Thank you.
Catholic
So
Outreach, still doing that. I'm also
you
trying
do
to
a
put
lot.
together a Catholic for Common Good organization, um, working with a number of other folks on just this whole concept of, there's a great program going on in Europe with young people on the economy of Francesco. And it's all about the economy of the common good. And so I'm talking to people in Europe about that and how can we bring that over to the United States to bring people together to talk about an economy of the common good.
And the reason we had to do this half hour early is that you, as soon as you get off here, you're running to the farm that's creating a whole lot of that's growing a whole lot of vegetables and goods for the soup kitchen that you guys populate every day. Look, Patrick Carlon, thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
You've got to love Nicole Wallace, but yes, she has come to a new realization. We got it all wrong. Well, those of us in independent media, we really didn't get it all wrong, right? But I mean, look, she's absolutely right. Check this out, and then we'll take it on the other side.
This is the conversation that needs to be had. We covered this incorrectly. Fear of Trump was the excuse for all of Mitch McConnell and Rob Portman and Kevin McCarthy and all these weenies who look the other way when Casey Hunt and Leanne Caldwell and Garrett Hake were there with the camera saying, do you believe with this outrageous thing that Donald Trump tweeted today? And our frame was, they must be afraid of our cameras because they're scared of Trump. We were wrong. They are Trump. And you are right. This story is no longer about Trump. It's what Trump revealed the Republicans to be. And I dare say my old boss was putting it nicely, Charlie, when he said the Republicans are now, they stand for isolationism, protectionism, and nativism. And I'll add one more, flagrant racism. And how do you not lump extremism into it, too? If you look at the intersection between the ideology that represents the gravest domestic violent extremism threat and the lies that Kevin McCarthy refused to knock down when Chris Wallace gave him multiple chances to do so yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, these guys have been playing with matches for the last 4 years. They've been, dousing kerosene on American democracy. And now there's a conflagration, and they don't know what to do about it. Because, again, they've created something that they can't stop. And, whether or not Donald Trump continues to pull the strings or whether he comes back in 2024, this is now the new reality. And this is the real threat that, in fact, a lot of us thought or were hoping that the Republican Party might get better after Trump left, rather than healing itself or having the fever break. What you're seeing in the Republican Party is a party that's getting crazier and that's getting worse even after Donald Trump has left office. And it's almost as if since he's been removed from the equation, there are no guardrails to the crazy that he set off.
No guardrails to the crazy that he set off. I think, like Nicole said, they are Trump. The crazy has always been there, and they just needed that leader that they could coalesce around. And in Trump, they got him. And a lot of the moderate folks started to think about, where does that leave us? Well, the truth of the matter is that they could decide to choose country over party. And choosing country over party meaning we are now in a politically existential and a negative existential state. And what one would want to do is say there's only one party right now that believes in true democracy. There's only one party right now, irrespective of how progressive you may think they are working for what the people want and not trying to limit their vote and not trying to limit their freedoms, etc., etc., etc. Therefore, in order to form a better union, in order for us to be a better country, for now, at least for now, we must leave the Republican Party and we must ensure that the other party is strong enough so that we can purge the Republican Party of all of the cancer and then rebuild a true conservative party that serves as that backstop that challenge, that force that makes sure every side is working as hard as they can to make things right for everybody. We have a very special guest, Cindy Kujan, certified financial planner, founder of Synergy Financial, and author of Redefining Financial Literacy, something that you've got to read. She believes that financial literacy is a moral imperative, which is why she devoted her professional life to help people understand the constantly evolving financial and economic landscape. She has 35 years in the industry. My God, I thought she was only 35. 8 security licenses, as well as a California insurance license. She's a leader in the financial industry, but also an innovator of investment methodology. Cindy's passion is to educate people on the importance of taking better care of their hard-earned money. Yeah, I need that. And she is passionate about inspiring people to believe in themselves and to believe in possibility. She broadcasts weekends on Los Angeles radio station KABC. Welcome to Politics Done Right. Cindy, how are you doing today?
I'm doing terrific. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So first of all, there is this big, humongous $1.9 trillion bill in Congress. Tell me, and in fact, they're debating it now. I'm taping it now. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on this bill.
Well, I am very excited about it because, you know, when stimulus is created by the government, that also keeps the stock market propped up, in my professional opinion. So that's good for investors in the short term. And as you know, the Senate just passed the $1.9 trillion package, which means the only person left to sign is Biden. And once he signs the bill, you can expect those checks to be directly deposited or mailed to you. If you're single, you're going to get $1,400 if you qualify. So there's some qualifications. If you're married, $2,800. And if you have small kids, up to $3,000 per child. So that's a lot of money if you have a family of 4, right?
It's a lot of money, but I'm going to, first of all, I want to thank you for coming here and talking. You know, a certified financial planner, I think, is important for a lot of people. Most can't afford you, so they're getting you for free right now. So let's ask you for some advice on a few things here. Somebody gets a $1,400 check.
Yeah.
What do they do? In other words, if it's a family of 2, they've got $2,800. If it's a family of 4, they may have up to over $5,000, right?
Yeah. So the first thing I think that investors really need to consider is their emergency fund, because almost 50% of Americans did not have $400 in their emergency fund when the pandemic hit. So, you know, a lot of times, you know, our brain, once we get, you know, a landfill of money that comes towards us, or we have this knee-jerk reaction to want to spend it, right? But I think people need to just take a step back and reward yourselves. Take some of it and maybe spend it versus taking all of it and buying something you really want, but you don't need. So that's the first thing. Evaluate your emergency fund. Number 2, really think this through. Don't get emotional. Once you've been able to reward yourself with some of that, if you feel you need to, then consider saving it. And you really need to identify what your goals are. Could you put it into something long-term like an IRA for retirement? Or do you want it in something more short-term to have access to it, more liquidity? So I think you need to take a moment and think about it. And please don't go open a Robinhood account and start gambling in the stock market. Because isn't that what a lot of people did with the first stimulus check?
I don't know. Cindy, do you know that for a fact? I wondered, I've heard that on some channels. People say, oh, they got a stimulus check and just went ahead and threw it into Robinhood. Do you really think that happened?
Well, the reason I state that is Robinhood had more accounts opened in the first half of this last year when the pandemic hit than any other time. So yes, I do believe people were, you know, out there. The market had crashed in March. As you know, the Dow dropped about 40%. I'm sure once people started getting their checks, they thought it would be a buying opportunity. And a lot of Robinhood accounts were opened. And you know, there's a lot of people, you know, stocks are red hot right now. You turn on the TV and that's all you hear is about these, high flying tech stocks. So yeah, that's one thing you don't want to do is invest your money in something you don't know about and risk the capital.
I think that is sound advice. But for another topic not to be discussed here, I just have a question for you because I think you should know this. What percentage of Americans actively, I'm not talking about maybe in their portfolios that they don't really manage, but what percentage of Americans actively engage in the stock market? Do you know that number? I don't.
It's actually a small percentage, believe it or not. The largest percentage of people are companies that buy back their stocks, mutual fund companies, and institutions. I was just reading something about that last night, that a majority of the people that are in the stock market are institutions.
The reason I asked that, Cindy, is because some of what I talk about, right? It is like we are a bifurcated economy. There are those that do things in the stock market, and then there are the rest of us. I mean, my stock market days are over. Political activism doesn't lend itself to stock market activities. A lot of stock market activities, that said. But anyhow, so you decide you're trying to tell folks when you get that stimulus, it's going to look like a windfall. Just
Yep.
don't go throw it out there. Be responsible with it. So what other financial mistakes should we be avoiding with this stimulus that comes? And then later on, as you're answering these questions, please start thinking about, there's a whole lot of commentary on the stimulus. And I want to hear your thoughts, not from a, hey, the stock market is going to look good, but whether it is a sensible plan or not. But first, what are the mistakes people make?
Well, I think a lot of mistakes. This is the statistic. CNBC came up with a statistic last year, which is very alarming. 75% of Americans reject financial advice today.
Reject.
And I reject financial advice
Okay.
today. And I think that's attributed to two factors. There's a new term in the field of psychology called the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's a new cognitive bias that people, unfortunately, think they know more about a subject than they do. And that's in all industries, okay?
Right.
I mean, when I get sick, I Google something, right? So the digital age, unfortunately, has made a lot of people access to information, but not knowledge. And that is a huge mistake because people are out there trying to do it themselves with the information that's on the internet or things that they Google. But information isn't knowledge unless an expert can interpret it. So that's definitely another mistake, is too many investors. JP Morgan actually did a recent study. In the last 20 years, the average individual investing their own money averaged about 2.8%. So not having somebody, a financial coach, a financial advisor, a certified financial advisor guiding you is critical in your success, along with getting financial empowerment. And I see with the digital age, people aren't reading anymore. And I'm authoring a book April 6th, and it's on Amazon right now, Redefining Financial Literacy.
I am going to have a link to that book because I think in our economic system, I am not a fan of our economic system, but if we're in the framework of our economic system, I think it is important that you know the parameters under which to act. So please continue. But I just wanted to say that I see a reason to have a book like yours.
Well, the book is really on economic and political risk. Things that you probably would enjoy, because I believe it's politics and economic ideologies that put us at a disadvantage in America when it comes to our retirement system and our three-legged stool for pension, Social Security, and the 60-40 model. So again, once you've taken, you've taken your emotions, put it aside, and started to think about the money logically, the next thing you really need to do is prioritize your goals, your investment objectives, and find a strategy. Even dollar cost averaging into investments is a great way to go. And I always like to tie some money up over the long run because it keeps us from wanting to go get at it. Because if the money is always in a liquid investment, you're going to be very, very open to just, hey, I need that purse, or I need that, this and that, or so trying to tie some of that money up in a long-term investment, such as an IRA or a Roth IRA, would be recommended, so that you can't really touch that till 59 and a half. And then keep enough for emergency. And again, take what your monthly expenses are, multiplying times 3. So if your expenses are $2,000, $3,000 a month times 3, most people should have about $9,000 in their emergency fund 3 months worth of their expenses.
Well, let me but just first say I think as planners who know what they're doing is really a godsend. I mean, the economy is can the different pieces of our economy can be complex as they are, and they are more complex than I think they need to be. But that that means we should have. And let me tell you, I can tell you the reality about uh, thinking you know more than you do when it
Yep.
comes to stock market, etc. Uh, Guilty as charged. I remember earlier I lost a ton of money on AOL. I remember when AOL was bought Time Warner. I just thought it was the greatest thing since apple pie. Lost my shirt, but but what's how true it is that you give a monkey a dart to throw at something and he does just as well as a stock picker. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to your 401ks, I ask a lot of my clients, how do you pick your 401ks? They said, well, I ask my friend. I look at the returns, whatever is the highest return I allocate. So, and it's unfortunate because it's not your fault. The educational system in this country has not equipped us with financial literacy, and the financial service industry doesn't help educate. So investors more so today, more than ever, are on their own. So to reach out to a qualified professional who can be your financial coach, put you on track, set your goals and objectives up, and monitor that to make sure you're getting exactly where you want to go is critical, more so than any other time in history.
Cindy, that is one of the most prescient statements. Our educational system has failed us in so many ways, financially, politically, and otherwise.
Yes.
Now, back to the question that I asked you to think about, as far as the bill in general. Do you think it's a net positive? I don't know what your ideology is specifically, but people tend to look at this bill from different ideological points of view. What are your thoughts on it in not necessarily ideologically, but will it be a net positive for the economy?
Temporarily, I have mixed emotions about it because
Tell me,
anytime you,
I'd like to hear about your mixed emotions about
okay,
it.
so my mixed emotions is this, and this is what a part of my book is about, is when you continue to borrow money to grow, okay, whether that's a government, a corporation, or individuals, and you're borrowing money to help grow the economy, sooner or later, that bubble bursts, and stimulus and monetary policy that this country has been under the last 20 years of borrowing trillions and trillions of dollars has caused havoc in our economic and political system. People aren't upset a Republican or a Democrat won office. People are upset about their money because, unfortunately, inequality, there's just 8 men that dominate half the world's wealth. And that is a big problem. I think short term, it will definitely help people that are suffering, who are unemployed and who may have been furloughed or have lost their jobs. But at the end of the day, continuing to stimulate the economy for COVID-19, for the credit crisis and the tech wreck is causing havoc on our retirement system. It's causing havoc in social issues in America today, on our retirement goals. And I think long-term, it's not good. Short-term, I think it would definitely help some people out.
Let me ask you this, because you are correct about us having deficit spending. Now, there are certain economists, specifically Stephanie Kelton, who believes that we have about a $500,000 to $800,000 slack in our markets right now, which would say, given that this $1.9 trillion is over several years, would just about fit that yearly slack that we have in our economy. And I know you're a financial planner, but to be a financial planner, you had to have some economics 101 as well. So let me ask you your thoughts on this, because I've been promoting this a whole lot. Most of the things that people are concerned about with our deficit spending is that we're in the long run going to get an overheated economy, inflation, etc. But right now we have such an underinflated economy where there's so much work to be done. There are there are a lot of workers ready to do the job.
Yeah.
But there's a connection that's missing, that thing in the middle. And it seems to me like these stimuli are that. And I want to add one other thing before I ask you to answer. And also, when we're building things of value, a bridge, I mean, isn't money in exchange for gold the same thing as building a bridge in exchange for money that ultimately also generate money from its own existence?
Yes, but you need the jobs, right? A lot of our
Right.
jobs have been, eliminated and taken through globalization. And, I just think that, a few in the country benefit from what's happening in this economic
Exactly.
ideology we have today. And I think the middle has really gotten hurt. And I just think when capitalism isn't working, in my professional opinion, we just need to tighten things up and balance.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second, Cindy. Hold on a second. Did I just
Yes.
hear you say what you said?
Yeah, I believe that, when the SEC allows companies or they repeal laws and allows companies to buy back their stock and not pay wages to the middle, as much as I know, wages to Americans have been
Stagnant.
slightly stifling for 20 years. Companies have used their profit instead of build their company up and give it to their employees. They've bought back their stocks. They've elevated the stock market because the IRS years ago said you can't pay a CEO more than $1 million. You can't write it off in a company. So companies have been given these stock options. And of course, if they take all their profits and buy back their stocks, they can sell their stock options. And it's the way the wealthier has gotten wealthier in the country. I understand tax cuts are good for the middle class, but when you reduce taxes for corporate America, like we did a few years ago, the administration thought they would give it back to the people. They don't give it back to the people. They keep it for themselves. And, and then you have, in 2000, you have greed because of the tech wreck and credit crisis, you have fraud. And then we got to print money or stimulate through quantitative easing, lowering interest rates, paying money to the banks and TARP money. We are just sustaining this unbelievable theme of greed in corporate America.
My God, Cindy, I would not have expected that narrative from you. I am so happy to hear that because I so agree with what you've just said. And I'll be frank, I think America, we have a problem.
We do.
And I think that problem is, and the problem is ideological, getting involved with the practical. Because, like I said, when you came on here and you said, "Oh, I'm from Orange County," all the stereotypes go up about Orange County,
right.
California, etc. Right? And also being a financial planner and all of that. I mean, I want to learn from you, but I also know that there may be certain biases within you that to go through. But then to hear you say what you just said, understanding what the issue and the problems are that most of us progressives understand, and to have somebody that I'll just say it. I don't think you're a progressive, but it's amazing that you just came out and gave a progressive litany. I find that we have to find some way that we can tell those guys who are running things, this is what's going to help us all.
Well, let me tell you why. Because it's correlated to how I invest your money. Most investors have money in stocks and bonds, right? Mm-hmm. So we know interest rates have gone as low as zero. How am I going to get income when I'm a retiree? The second half of it is, what am I going to do as a retiree? Put all my money in the stock market and lose 40%? So we have this quandary going on in society today. People are scared, they're anxious, they feel like they're going to run out of money, and the writing's on the wall. Using a 2 asset class model, in my professional opinion, is no longer sustainable, and we must build a multi-asset class concept to fight these economic and political ideologies that have come against us in the last 30 to 50 years. And we can do it. We can build a sustainable retirement. There are other asset classes that you could jump into that are similar to what the rich people have had or the endowments have had access to: commercial real estate. You've heard cryptocurrency. You've heard private credit, venture capital. There are asset classes that the Main Street investors can now take advantage of that we didn't have 20 years ago. And David Swanson of the Yale Endowment have been using 7 asset classes beating the S&P 500. So we must fight back. We must get educated and empowered that we can invest like the wealthy elites in this country, as well as the largest institutions in America.
Cindy Kujan, certified financial planner. I think that's a perfect place to end this, except that I always ask this last question. What would you have liked me to ask you that I didn't?
No, I think you covered I'm glad you touched based on the political and economic ideologies, because I think that's what's hidden from investors. And by you uncovering that, you're making us all smarter, all empowered to make a difference and to fight back these forces. So thank you for having your station and empowering people with the facts.
Cindy Guzman, thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Okay, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. Again, please remember to keep your community radio station, KPFT, in your minds. Talk about it. Tell your friends to tune into 90.1 FM Houston or listen at kpft.org. Keep us on air by donating what you can afford at our website, kpft.org. Once again, remember, you can get Politics Done Right Mondays through Fridays on Facebook Live at facebook.com/politicsdoneright. Again, that is facebook.com/politicsdoneright, or on YouTube Live at politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. That is politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. Don't forget, follow me on Twitter. What's my Twitter handle? Egberto Willies. That is spelled EGBERTOWILLIES. Again, that is EGBERTOWILLIES. Thank you so kindly for having been here with me at Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willies, and you know how I get out of this, baby. I am what? Out! Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.